It's great to be here with you today. Thank you, Dan. We love CBMC, and when I say we, I think I speak on behalf of the entire Game Plan for Life team. Of course, Coach Joe Gibbs, who has been a successful businessman. We know about him as a coach as well, but I say businessman, he's the owner of Joe Gibbs Racing. And Joe Gibbs Racing, I always say I'm living the dream. Have an opportunity to go there and see all the things that we do from the operation side of things. Our ministry game plan is within the confines of Joe Gibbs Racing. If you never been into a race shop, of course that's the mecca of NASCAR is in Charlotte. And so one of many race shops, I would tell you to go not only just see Joe Gibbs Racing, see all the race shops. It's different from any other sport I've had a chance to be a part of because the access to the fans. And so we love our fans. You can come into the race shop, kind of look over the viewing glass window. If you ask for me, I give you the behind-the-scenes tour, of course. But more importantly, I always say we're really just a ministry that just happens to race around the track on Sunday. And the reason why I say that, it talks, what Dan talks about, it relates exactly to being integrated in all that you do. That's our mission when you see it on the wall, is reflecting Christ in all that we do. And Coach lives that out. And the only reason that we race and we're successful is to be able to expand the gospel. That is the true reason. And so Game Plan for Life is Coach's passion to be able to share his story. Anybody that wants a book, we're not selling it, but you can go to our website. We give them away for free on our website. A New York bestseller, Tony Dungy did the forward. Go to GamePlanForLife.com. We'll send it to you, shipping free of cost as well. It's a great book. A lot of churches, a lot of small groups use it. Businessmen use it. They talked about where men had questions about not just Christian men, but just men in general. They did a survey, and they came up with 10 topics that they came back with where just men had questions about. And some of these topics, Coach got some of the best authors and experts at each topic. You could hear about Josh McDowell, what the Bible talks about. Ken Boa, Who is God? John Lennox. Rabbi Zachariah, Chuck Colston, Tony Evans, the list goes on, and Coach weaves in his story within that. And I think it's just fitting for me to be able to share who Coach is. I had the great privilege to be able to play for him. My connection with Coach is with the Redskins when he came back out of retirement. And so today I'm able to share a little bit about living out God's call. And it relates, I'm sorry, I got to use some football vernacular. I don't know if we have any football fans here at all, but I use that. We got some Redskins fans in the house. Oh, you know what? I know we have no Cowboy fans. You can see them guys a mile away. Exactly. But I know we got some Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right. Many memories that I remember playing in Tampa Bay, and of course, being drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars as the #1 draft pick with Tom Coughlin. We love being here in Florida, my family and I, and then having an opportunity to play as a Redskin. Steve Spurrier, the old ball coach, the Gator coach, came from college, came to the pros. Of course, Marvin Lewis was our D coordinator. They had just won a championship in Baltimore, and so those two guys brought me in as a free agent, and it was just awesome. The only problem was we didn't win. So I love Steve Spurrier. I got to share a quick Steve Spurrier story. And so Steve, if you know anything, hey, I love Steve. Steve would tell you, man. I mean, me and him, man, we're awesome. But Steve doesn't like cold weather. He doesn't like any type of weather for that matter. And so Steve would look out Coach Spurrier and say, we ain't going to get nothing done today, guys. It's raining outside. Call it up. Call it in. But look, he just called practice. It's raining. It's football weather. He just called. It's awesome. We get to go home early. And so, of course, Coach Gibbs coming in, totally opposite. You know, I heard from the Bostic guys, went to Clemson and the Hogs, and they kind of gave us the lowdown. Hey, you guys have been spoiled. Coach Gibbs ain't never canceled a practice. Never. It could be a monsoon outside. And he wasn't lying. And we found out pretty soon that he didn't cancel a practice. And so we come in, and of course, Coach had this term that he coined. It was called Redskin weather. Everything was Redskin weather. It didn't matter if it was raining, snowing. Even if it was 110 degrees in training camp, the news is telling you keep your dog inside. It's Redskin weather, right? And so we began to subliminally, just in our mind, everything was Redskin. And it worked because we were able to go in different climates, Buffalo, wherever it was, it's Redskin weather. We're ready. And we really built a camaraderie until one day I remember we were practicing, and he hadn't canceled the practice. Obviously, it was Redskin weather no matter the weather, and it was raining, cats and dogs, thundering and lightning. We're out there. Of course, it's Redskin weather. We all knew it. And so we can't even practice. We're kind of ducking, and it's lightning and thundering and everything. And all of a sudden, 100 yards away on our next practice field, lightning hits the field. Boom! And guys run right into the facility. We don't wait for coach to say anything. We just run right in. And we always had a character on our team. It's always a guy to keep it light. Fred Smoot was that guy for us, and he was one of our favorite characters. And he was waiting for coach because we knew he was going to be ticked off, taking his Gore-Tex gear off, throwing his play stuff down on the floor. And here's Fred Smoot comes up to coach. Hey, coach, I guess God's trying to tell you that ain't Redskin weather, is it, baby? But from that, I tell you, he's a great leader, successful businessman, coach, Hall of Famer. He'll be the only guy to ever be in 2 Hall of Fames. He's probably the best coach to ever coach. I say that not just because of the Super Bowls, but no coach has ever won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. In one particular era, quarterbacks were great, but they weren't Hall of Famers. And 3 different running backs, 1 Hall of Famer and John Riggins. No coach has ever done that in one era. And so he is known as one of the best minds. And so I'm, of course, a little biased, but to be able to have a guy that I can tell you, with all the success, he's even a better person. With 700 employees at Joe Gibbs Racing, 250,000 square feet of space, 10 race teams, that includes also the super and motocross teams. Every guy can tell you the same thing from the top to the bottom. They want to come and work at Joe Gibbs Racing. I talk to a lot of the guys, why do you want to come work for Joe Gibbs Racing? Because he treats you like a family. Unlike certain other teams, which I'm not going to name, they say when you wear out, you're like a tool, we come and replace you. Guys that I know have been there, you don't leave Joe Gibbs Racing unless you did something to leave Joe Gibbs Racing. And guys have been there for 20-something odd years. We just celebrated our 25th year. And it shows you because it starts at the top and it's integrated throughout his life. 3 team chaplains. We have a big Bible study on Wednesday. We have about 200 guys. Guys have about 20 small groups going throughout the week. And so he's about building men through leadership with biblically sound messages throughout the week. And so for me, living out my call, it started in 2005. And the reason why I say 2005, I told you that, of course, Coach Gibbs, he came back after Spurrier stepped down in 2004. And so we're here in our 2nd year, and Coach hadn't won, really. And people were telling him he's washed up, we're not going to win a game, and, you know, it's already over him. And so I remember it was pivotal for us because we had come down here to play a close game in 2005. It was in the middle of the year. I don't want to misquote it, but I believe after he had won a close game against Philadelphia, we came down here November 13th, 2005. We lost. I'll never forget it. It was a goal line stand. Chucky and the boys went for it on 4th down. It was questionable. I know Mike Allscott was down. He hit down. But we're here at Raymond James Stadium. So I realized you guys get the calls, and we lost that game. All right. You guys won 36-35. But we felt like we're going to be back. And we had still a long season, and that was a pivotal time for us during that year because we had just won a tough game in Philly. Halfway during the season, we needed to make it to the playoffs. I would love nothing more than to have played for Coach to be able to make it to the playoffs. He was such an awesome guy, and I hated hearing all the bad talks in D.C. about Coach being washed up. And so guess what? After that game, we lose 2 more games. We lost to the Raiders, lost a heartbreak to the Chargers in overtime, first playoff scrimmage. They won the toss. LaDainian Tomlinson wins the game. We didn't even have a chance to play even the 2nd down. He runs it in for like 60 yards, wins the game. And so right now we're at a tough time because everybody in D.C. is saying the season is over. We even had some of my own teammates planning for flights to be able to take vacation. I know my wife was on that boat as well. She was already planning vacations. And I'll never forget, Coach Gibbs came into the room, and he just had such a presence about him. And he knew that man, this was the time where something had to be said or he was going to lose the entire team. And he came in there and said, nobody believes that we can do it outside of this room. And there's even some guys here that may not believe it, but I need to tell you guys something. All that matters is you. Nobody else matters but you. And if you believe, that's all that I need to know, that you believe. And so, guys, we got nothing to lose. We got 6 games ahead of us. If we lose one, we're out. We got 3 of our divisional foes we got to play, but we got to start one day at a time, and we did. We made a resolve that day as a team to start one practice, one game, 1 week at a time. Won the first game, second game. Long story short, we went on a 5-game winning streak. The reason why I was so passionate because when Steve Spurrier, going back, stepped down as a coach, I love Steve and would always go see him and speak to the team at the Gamecocks when he was there. I mean, man, you are starting over as a team when there's a new coach that comes in. And there was a changing of the guards that had to happen. Of course, we knew it as players, but we felt like if we had an opportunity to prove ourselves, we could show this new coach who we have been seeing the Hall of Fame statues there the entire time, and we heard about Coach coming back as a Hall of Famer. It was like Elvis coming back, literally. I mean, it was. And so here's this guy who has this presence, had never met him, never talked to him. We knew the history, of course, and the first time we ever even heard from Coach Gibbs was a press conference on ESPN. We're in the off season, and guys are all over the country, and Coach Gibbs said, we're going to start this season off with a mini camp. You never start a season off with a mini camp. Why? Because guys are out of shape, they're vacationing, and so you bring them in to kind of work them out, then you get to the mini camp at the end. Well, we all knew that meant, man, some heads were going to be rolling. He was going to cut some guys. And I was getting calls all over the country because I was the player rep that had got nominated by my team to represent. Every team has a player rep, and I was the representative for the Redskins. And so guys were calling me asking the same question. Hey, there's no way Coach can do a mini camp, can he? It's not in our CBA. That must be illegal. I said, there's nothing in our CBA. We need to fix it, but there's nothing in our CBA that says you can start a mini camp to start the season off, the off season. And I said, man, they're telling me, man, I'm out of shape. I'm in Jamaica. I'm here. I said, well, you better get back and start working out because we knew the date. But I had to call Coach and let him know I couldn't make this mini camp. And how do you think that went over? The first time I called Coach, never met him, talked to him on the phone, and I said, Coach, I can't make the mini camp. He was like, well, how come? I'm making my decision based on, I'm a player rep, Coach. I got a meeting there, and we have these player rep meetings, a yearly deal, and I got to go. And he's telling me, son, if you ain't here, you may not have a job. First words he's telling me. And then he tells me, I know you guys ain't doing nothing in Hawaii, meeting over there, player reps. It was hard to convince Coach that I was in Hawaii and missing the mini camp. And so I had a decision I had to make because I understood that he wanted the best for the team. How many times do you come across a boss or whomever, and both sides, they want the best. I knew for myself, the guys that voted me in, and if I come into that mini camp, I lose respect for every guy in that locker room. Not only do I lose the respect for my players and my teammates, but I guarantee you I lose the respect of those coaches if I would have came in there. And so I had to say, Coach, I'm sorry, I can't come. Guys have voted me in. This is a privilege for me to do this. And he hung up the phone. I didn't know what was going to happen. A lot of praying, and somehow I made the team, and I was on the team, and my wife and I were on our way back to D.C. A lot of my friends got cut, of course, and we stopped in Vegas. My wife's from Vegas, and I just so happened to be able to find out there was a race in town. Now, I'm a kid from Chicago, south side of Chicago. I ain't never watched a race a day in my life. I turn just as quick as I go past the channels in NASCAR. I'm like, man, who wants to watch a bunch of guys going left-hand turns in circles? I'm just saying, that was just my thought. And so I had some family that were in Vegas, and they wanted to go to this race in Las Vegas. And I'm like, well, the guy's an owner. And my wife was like, you just need to keep a job. Don't call Coach. And I called her. And I think I was right for the 1 out of 10 times that she was usually right. And so I called Coach, and I said, Coach, I'm in Vegas. I'd love to go to this race. I've never been to one. And he stopped me. Now, Coach has never cussed. I never heard him say a cuss word ever. I thought he cussed me out. He didn't say one cuss word, but he told me off that day. He said, son, you lucky to have a job. and you're in Vegas. I don't even know what you're doing in Vegas, son. You need to be working out. He's telling me all this stuff. And I'm like, Coach, my wife's from here. We live here in the off season, this, that. And then he gives the phone to his assistant, doesn't say bye or anything. Long story short, me and my friends and family, we get to the track. I don't know what NASCAR is. And I get there to the credential trailer. There's a guy there that runs the credential trailer, a guy named Merle, and he loves the Redskins. The problem is he loved Coach more than me. He knew who I was. And I said, yeah. Actually, Marlon, I said, Marlon, I got these passes here. And he's like, yeah, I got them for you, buddy. I said, okay, what's the deal? He said, you got to pay for them. And I said, I've never been to a race, guy, so I just thought it was a football ticket, like $80. I'm like, I got it. Don't worry about it. He said, yeah, you got $1,800? I said, $1,800? I said, truly, man, Coach got me on the VIP. I'm a player. He said, yeah, he got you on there. He's saying pay. And true story. And he says, I love you, Renaldo. I'm a Redskin, but I love Coach Gibbs more, man. And so you got to pay for these if you're going to get in. And I was like, at first, I'm like, screw this. I'm out of here. I ain't paying for go watch guys go around in circles. I don't even like NASCAR. But again, thank God for the Holy Spirit. I believe that was a check in my heart. And I paid for those tickets. Used my credit card. It hurt bad. And I get on what they call the grid, which is right there on pit row. I'm there. I'm like, man, taking it all in, looking at all the drivers, all the access. It's awesome. The race starts. Kyle Busch wins the race, one of Coach Gibbs' drivers. It was awesome. I mean, what happened was the unexpected. I got hook, line, and sinker in NASCAR. Never been to a race. I always say, if you've never been to a race, don't judge until you go. It's unbelievable. And so I got hook, line, and sinker, and now I end up making the team, of course. And through those next couple of years, man, I'm going to races all over the country on my own, Richmond, Dover, just showing up and coaching a couple of years in this thing. He comes up to me and says, hey, I want to talk to you in my RV real quick. And he says, hey, son, I've had thousands of players come and go to the race. They always come and go. But you coming back and you don't want nothing. You're just showing up all over. I've been watching you and you ain't asked for nothing. You a fan, son? I said, I love this, man. This is awesome, man. I know it doesn't go, man, Chicago and all that. I love it. And he said, hey, this may be something you may want to do afterwards. Whenever you retire, why don't you come up and shadow actually next off season? I did that, came up and shadow, saw the shop. It was unbelievable, all the pieces that go into it, even drawn in even more. And so I fast forwarded to that 2005 season, and so we finished the season. We make the playoffs. In 2006, we go into the playoffs, and guess who our first team was? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. How sweet, right? And so we go in. We got a young guy named Sean Taylor who we drafted that year, and one of the greatest players I've ever had a chance to play with. And the game is going great, and I'm already thinking in my head, man, we're going to win this thing. We're playing here against Chucky, redeem ourselves, man, and we're going to actually win this deal. And I'm thinking about the next game, man. We're going to win it for Coach, carry him off the field. It's going to be awesome. And I come around the corner. My other fellow defensive lineman, Philip Daniels, is on the other end, and Chris Sims is the quarterback. And I'm coming around, and I try to slap the ball out of his hand. And it was like the perfect storm because right at that time, my defensive end and a 300-pound lineman stuck on him at the same time go right through my arm. Boom, break my ulnar and radius right in half through the skin. It goes right through. The guys thought it was so loud they thought a gunshot went off in the midst of a game. And so the most pain I've ever felt in my life. And so I'm on the ground with 2 bends on my arm with the bone sticking out. And I'm thinking like, man, this is not good. I go into the locker room. My wife, my mom, they beat me there in the locker room. And 10 morphine shots later, don't do anything. They take me to the hospital. They're going to do surgery right there on the spot. I couldn't, of course, fly back with the team. I woke up. All I remember seeing is Mr. Dan Snyder, the owner team there, and Coach Gibbs' wife there. And they said, hey, you're not getting surgery here. And I'm just a messenger. This is what Dan Snyder said. You're not getting surgery here in the enemy territory. That's what Dan told. That's all I remember. And I remember the doctor said, you're crazy. He can't be on the plane because of the pressure and what's going on there. You don't know what's going on there. And he said, no, we'll fly low altitude. And he did. He took me and my family on this private plane, flew low altitude, went all the way there to D.C. and had surgery right there as soon as I landed. But the problem was with all that was I had to be able to make it back for the next season. And I had gotten hurt at the end. Of course, we lost to Seattle the next game there in Seattle, close game there. And so now the off season begins. As soon as the other season ends, it begins. And somehow, with a titanium plate in my arm, it took me a while to get back. That whole season was rough. They let me stay on the team. And then in 2007, man, here I am going into my 10th year, got nominated as a captain. My birthday on September 3rd, and my wife went in to get a gift, had a big birthday bash set up for me. I had never had a birthday party because it always fell on the kickoff of the year, but that day was also cut day. And I remember looking at my watch, and man, 12 o'clock was the cut day. We were in Tyson Corner Mall. I was people watching, and she went in to get me a gift, and I looked at my watch, 12:10. I'm like, I made it. 10 years. Praise God. And then I get a call on my phone. Now, it could have been anybody wishing me a happy birthday or saying we're coming to the birthday party, but you ever got that gut feeling, right, where you just knew something wasn't right? And I let it go to voicemail. I didn't even listen. I didn't even check it. I just let it go to voicemail. I just had an eerie feeling about it, and I let it go to voicemail, and I look at it, and it said Redskin Park, missed call. Listen to the call, and there's a guy on the other line say, hey, Renaldo, you need to get to Redskin Park as soon as possible and bring your playbook. Now, these are the deadly words that we say as players. We call him the Grim Reaper. He calls every guy. The last cut day, 30 guys get cut, period. They can only keep 53. So I knew right then and there I was cut. Fired, cut on my birthday, whatever you want to call it. At that time, my wife comes out, and now she's like, hey, you ready for our birthday bash? I said, babe, we ain't having no birthday bash. I just got fired. And she's like, no, you didn't. You're pranking me. I'm like, no, listen. She falls to pieces in Tyson's Corner Mall. I mean, I'm telling you, I pick her up. I'm like, I just got cut. She's the one more messed up than me. But some of you guys that know, if you're married, whatever you go through, your mate goes through as well. And that was the case. My wife and I, we had gotten married when I was 19 years old. And that's when I came to Christ. Is when I got married, because I was on my way out of Notre Dame as a student athlete. I got summoned to a room, about 10 people, some basketball players, some girls soccer players, of course my roommates, because I wasn't doing what I should have been doing once I got there. And so the dean of students came in and said, you are the worst of the worst. You've forgotten what it means to be a student athlete, meaning student first. Here at Notre Dame, we don't make any passes for anybody. You guys won't be here next semester. See, he had this talk with every person that was on academic probation, and nobody ever made it. And he was shooting to us straight and said, hey, start filling out applications right now, because you won't make it here at Notre Dame next semester. Cutting it to you straight. And so for me, hadn't prayed in 2 years. Only time I've been to church, we go to mass before a game with Father Really, that was it. And so 2 years hadn't prayed, but I got on my knees and prayed. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't see it in my home. My dad was an alcoholic growing up, and so I get to Notre Dame, and I'm drinking. I'm doing all the things that I said I wasn't going to do, I'm doing, because I had no power over the sin that was on my life that I didn't even know it even existed. And so here I am on my knees for the first time in 2 years praying. I asked God for two things. Of course, somehow help me to stay at Notre Dame, because I realized at the time it wasn't just about me. It was about so many people depending on me, praying for me. And I asked God for a wife at 19 years old, because I had done the things that the world told me was going to make me happy, and I felt empty. And I asked God for a wife. I met my wife a month later. 3 months after that, we were married. And so that had to happen because God sent me somebody to help me. My friends disowned me. My dad even disowned me for that year. Can you imagine? He thought I was crazy. I'm getting kicked out of school. Now I'm about to get married to somebody he felt like I didn't even know. And so that separation had to happen, because who did I have to depend on? Nobody but God. And so my wife was the one that told me, get out of bed or I'm going back to Vegas, going back home, unless you go to class. And I'm like, I got great people taking notes. Don't worry about that. But she wasn't going for it, because I was doing the same habits. I didn't know how to break myself out of it, right? And she said, no, you going, because I didn't marry a dumb jock, so you going to class. So I started going to class. Every person in there got kicked out of Notre Dame. That dean was right, except for me. And so that's when my coming to Jesus came. "22 years now of marriage. I mean, tough times, ups and downs, but it's only God's grace that has kept us together. But I know behind every great man is a greater woman. She was that for me. I know I speak from experience. And so now I fast forwarded back to that time where she's crying right there in Tyson's Corner Mall. We've been through it all. On my way back, I'm thinking, being sad, but now I'm mad. Because I'm thinking about who did they cut me for? I'm thinking all this stuff as I'm going, taking this 30-minute trek back to Ashburn, Virginia. And as I get there, I'm starting to think, man, I remember when guys get cut, you try to empathize, but you can't empathize unless it happens to you. That's what empathy is, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. And now I know, like, man, they're going to give me a trash bag, clean out my locker. They're going to escort me out with the police guys. I've seen it happen many a time, so that's me now. And now as I go in, I'm about to really cuss the coach out. It's really about what's about to happen. And my wife knew it, and she said, no, we're going to pray. I said, woman, I just said I'm about to cuss the coach out. We're not praying. But she grabs my arm and was like, no, we're praying. Thank God she grabbed me. We said a quick prayer, but it did change my perspective. I go inside, and instead of cussing the coach out, I said, Coach, I'm hurt and my pain is going, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. The other guy on the other side of the table was Coach Joe Gibbs. And he said, son, you're more than a football player. And those words resonated as he even said it a second time. Son, you're more than a football player. I didn't really understand it, but what he was saying was, I allowed what I did to become who I was, and it defined me. Even though I was a Christian, my wife and I, we gave our life to Christ in 97, and now fast forwarded, we're in 2007. Man, I had it all wrong. I allowed football to be first and then a believer, instead of being a believer that just happens to play football. And so living out my call, I needed that to happen, because really I want to take it a step further than what he talked about being integrated. I just allowed God to kind of inject me. I allowed that instead of integration, because just an ejection is just a one shot. You know what I mean? You could pick and choose, but when you allow the Lord to integrate, you allow the Lord to integrate your life. I mean, everything else, God is the center, and no matter what else happens, everything surrounds that. Amen, brother. And so, for me, I needed to be cut. I needed to be fired. Because to be fired, I ended up being hired. Yeah, coach hired me, but God hired me. To be a part of something great, better than me. Football was a passion, of course. And when we think about our call, your call is not always your passion. God led me to Joe Gibbs Racing, which I knew nothing about. I thought I didn't like. And all of a sudden allowed me to be a part of Game Plan for Life. And so being a part of Game Plan for Life, as I land the plane here and close, our ministry is truly about providing a platform to those that may not know the Lord. Being able to use that platform to be able to preach the gospel. Dan and CBMC, they're going to be helping us do that here in Tampa, but it's not our ministry, it's the city's ministry. To be able to do Game Plan for Life assemblies to the schools, because our kids need direction, of course. And our schools are saying, come in. They know we're a ministry, but they're saying, come in. Chicago, they tell us to preach the gospel in Chicago. I'm telling you. That's what the principals are telling me in Chicago when I go back home. We want you to preach the gospel. We do an altar call in high schools, Robeson and Inglewood, some of the worst areas. We do altar calls there. And then third but not the least is our prison ministry, going into the darkest parts of the prisons. Yes, we do the 10-week session that we have for Game Plan, but even more so, God has allowed us to do the unthinkable, which is putting a seminary in the darkest part of the prison, which is already backed by our lieutenant governor, already backed by the commissioner that runs the prison. Southeastern Baptist Theological is providing the curriculum with President Danny Aiken, an unbelievable team. We're going to bring in 30 lifers who are serving life. They're going to go through a 4-year accredited SACS education. Once they leave, they're now equipped, not just changed, but they're equipped to be able to minister, counsel, and then be sent out as field ministers all there across the entire state of North Carolina, to be placed strategically by those wardens to be able to change not only within the violence that is being decreased, but also people that are getting out to be able to touch those. So this is bigger than us. This is a God vision. We know that. Coach Gibbs realizes that, but we just want to be faithful in what he's called us to do. So I know I'm out of time. We'd love to answer any questions afterwards. I'll be around. We appreciate you guys for coming and CBMC for their partnership. Thank you. God bless.